Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I'm Shane. Well, if you haven't heard, I'm so sorry to have to announce that Eileen Colts passed away of COVID on September 12th in Florida. And in many ways, this is probably one of the most difficult videos I've had to make just because of my process and really wanting to get the word out about um, just how wonderful a person she was. But I know most of you already know. Much of our relationship was right here along with you all, and I know you felt just as close as I did with Eileen. And she was such an amazing individual to have known. And really, there's really no words um, to really express, the sadness of what we've lost here on the 3D plane. And my heart goes out to her friends and family, of course. Her daughter Emily. Um, this was sudden. Eileen wasn't expecting this. I was talking to her up until she went to the hospital, and she was very aware of what's really going on everywhere in the world. We are part of a Facebook group that we share stuff, and then we share stuff together just directly. And so I do know that she was very much aware of everything, and she was having a really hard time before she actually went to the hospital. I know she wouldn't have gone unless she absolutely had to. And her last message to me was when she went to the hospital. She said she was in the hospital with a pneumonia, and that was the last I heard. And then luckily, I had Emily and some of her meditation group updating me while she was in the hospital. And then I got the word that she passed away on the 12th. And immediately, I went into meditation, and because she's really the first person that we've discussed so much about what it would be like on the other side, and going on little ghost hunts and ghost adventures and talking about the afterlife so much. And of course, she had that near-death experience. So, and we had the discussion, if one of us would go, we would reach out to the other one. So, one of the reasons this is so difficult is because I go through this process so much that before I actually record, and each time I'll get choked up, and then my nose will start running, and then I'm sniffling, and then I gotta start the whole process over again. So I'll hold it together here, but it's just that we actually discussed this, so I was actually looking for her to reach out to me, and she did, like almost immediately in meditation. And she looked a lot. That's why I use this picture right here, because she looked a lot like, I just saw her face. It was kind of glowing in gold. She looked much more giddy the way she appeared to me, and like just excited, and like she's there, and I got so much information in that one little moment, like a little download from her, and it was that it was always meant to be this way. She didn't know, on the higher level she knew, but she didn't want to know. She wanted it to be a surprise because she had a lot of fear surrounding leaving her daughter Emily. Nobody wants to leave their kid. So just having that would have made the process much harder had she known way ahead of time. But as soon as she passed, she even showed me how those worries completely vanished, because she saw all the help that Emily has, and all the love that you all are sending her is like actually creating this cocoon of light around her and making it much easier for her. So she wanted to thank you all for that. And of course, I do have a GoFundMe link for Emily. I'll link that below. So if you do want to help out financially, you can help out there. That's all I have is that one link. So yeah, so once she showed me how she was just at peace, and then I at that moment I was like, oh my gosh, let me turn on the ghost radar, and I had actually turned it on earlier. This was actually my first experience when I first heard about it. I turned it on because that's what me and Eileen would do. Like she'd be turning it on for me. So I just turned it on. I'm like, we'll see what happens, and the word push came up on it, and I was like, push, whatever, and then I was just sitting quietly, and then the word hey came up on it. And for anybody that knows me, I don't answer my phone ever because my ringer's off, and I'm hardly ever looking at it to see that it's ringing. And if I am looking at it, I'm probably already in the middle of a call or doing something. So, like, that's my thing. I never answer my phone. But the word hey popped up on there, and while I'm in my mind and I'm thinking, what? The phone begins to ring, and it says Florida. I'm like, and I just heard she passed away, so I went and answered it like I normally wouldn't, but I wasn't doing anything, so I answered it, and it ended up being Eileen's friend, and we had a nice conversation. Her name's Jackie, and we just talked about her and made that connection, and I really felt like Eileen was wanting, me to make that connection for all of her little network of people to sort of reach out to one another and get to know each other, which has happened in this whole process. And so after we got off the phone, that's when I went back in meditation, and I saw her. And while she was like, sort of, giving me this little download, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to turn back on the ghost radar. And she's like, and you could totally imagine her. She was like, why? We're talking. I'm here, like she does. And I was like, well, how do I know this is just my imagination or something? I need, something else. So I like turned back on the ghost radar, and it said record, whale, and then solve. Like it was a little mystery to solve. And I closed my eyes, and I immediately saw a record. I was thinking record at first, like maybe record the sound of a well, but no, I saw like a record in my head, like a vinyl record with a blue label with a white whale facing to the left. And so I'm like, let me see what I can find if I Google that. So this album comes up, and actually two different ones. They look like the same record, but as I looked, I saw they had different titles, and one of them was like Not Me Baby or something along those lines. And I was like, well, what does the other one say? And it said Happy Together, and it was a song Happy Together by the Turtles, an old song. And I played it, and I got this little vision of her, and her husband had already passed away, so she was like showing me this picture of reuniting, and it was just a beautiful, she just was giddy about the whole thing. That's the feeling I got from her. And like I said, she could see all the love that her daughter was being surrounded by, all the help and support, and then she's still supporting her as well from the other side. So this was that whole image I got. And there was something else when the ghost radar initially went off. The word push came on there, Push. You kind of think it's not, it's just kind of a word that can be used for so many different things. So it's kind of just vague or whatever. But when I was talking to Jackie, she said it was a push. And I ended up getting more information later off of this. But in that moment, I said, did you just say push? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like Push? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, that's weird. That word just came through the ghost radar right before it said hey, and the phone rang. So that was another a key thing that sort of had happened. So as this week has gone on, and I've been, gathering photos and things and wanting to put something nice together for Eileen, and, because she just meant so much to so many of us. And I just keep feeling her come through when I think of the first instance, about like the imagination. When I was thinking about that and wanting to share that story and sort of thinking of how I would word it and everything, she would come through again, like while I'm thinking about it, and explain about the imagination was one little download that I'll share here. And I'll do more later as because she's almost like in the last week, she's sort of become this guide that's been passing along information just like we would, just like we talked about we would, you know. And so the imagination question I'd asked her about, or that I said, you know, because I don't know if it's my imagination or not. Well, she gave me this little download, and the imagination is like our tool for consciousness. It's like in our, if you think about, you know, while we're here in 3D, we have this interface, and our imagination is how we interact with consciousness. So she was showing me how, and this answered a lot of questions I've had about ghosts and the way people see people and things like that. So when she came to me energetically in the very beginning, I saw this picture of her that looked a lot like this photo up here with her face all golden and looking happy and everything. She was explaining how that was my imagination that constructed what I was seeing, even her voice and everything, from sort of this database of what I know she looks like and everything. But from her perspective, she was just communicating with me energetically, like through just pure consciousness. No need for a body or anything like that. But it was sort of, you know, while we're here in the 3D, it was our way of deciphering the interaction that was happening. So she was showing me, she's like, it's all the same. You are imagining it. You are making it up. But from that energetic standpoint, and we do this a lot with things. And then I realize a lot of my downloads come that way. If I can't make sense of them directly, I'll usually get some type of like little, you know, parable, if you will, you know, to sort of kind of explain it. So that's one little thing she was explaining to me. And it really answered that big question about how, you know, like, you know, sometimes people will see someone appear to them. Now, this is all in the mind. Not, I haven't seen her appear with my natural eyes. This is all like either during meditation, just in my third eye. But a lot of when we see people in our mind like that, and some people will say, well, I just saw them younger. And some people will say, oh, I just saw them almost like they looked when they just died, you know. And it's like, you can have both of those and those both be true. And she was showing me how it's really, you know, the observer that translates that into whatever it is that you end up experiencing. But the message is what's actually important. And so while I'm really sorry to say goodbye to Eileen on this 3D plane here, she's been in my awareness so much this last week. And it's so funny because I was just like laughing, thinking like, wow, it's like you become this guide. You're like this guide that passes along this information of things we wondered about together. And also, she was explaining how all of the time we all spent together in meditation, we've all got this connection with her. And she said to think of her as an advocate, because we've had that connection. Although she's gone on the 3D plane, a lot of us never even connected with her on the 3D plane. I had the opportunity to meet her at ECETI, of course, but most of you just know her from the show and connecting through the power of one all over the world. And so you've already been making that connection. And she even said she's already been connecting to a lot of you, and just to trust what you've been connecting and not to doubt it, because she has indeed been connecting to a lot of you right now. And once again, I want to thank all of you for sending love to her daughter, Emily, right now. She was showing me how it was like she was being surrounded by all this love, light energy, and it was definitely supporting her and helping her emotionally while she's dealing with all of this stuff. And so just keep doing what you're doing, you guys. And I'll definitely have some more to come as far as Eileen is concerned, because it's really one of the other things that I realized, I guess since my brother passed away a few months ago, I began to understand that scripture about let the dead bury the dead. And you know, in the context in the Bible, it's sort of presented like, you know, Jesus tells this guy to follow him, and the guy's like, hey, I need to bury my dad first. And he's like, oh, well, let the dead bury the dead. And it sounds kind of like this heartless interchange, right? Where Jesus is like, hey, you come now or forget about it, buddy, but it's not like that at all. So one level of that is realizing when I went to my brother's funeral a few months back, how much he was living on through all of the people in attendance there and hearing all of the different stories and the effect that he had on so many different people and how he was living on through all of those people. So in a sense, there's that sort of 3D level of understanding. But then as this happened with Eileen and these interactions over the last week, and even with this very topic I'm talking about, this let the dead bury the dead, it's what would Jesus do in that instance? Now, it's not in the Bible, but I'm sure Jesus would have given that guy some kind of connection, gave him some kind of vision of his dad, and let him speak to his dad on the other side, because he goes into the kingdom of heaven after that, or the kingdom of God, or however it's described. And so it doesn't get specific about it, but he did move the guy's focus from, his 3D death in his body that was dead, that was never really, it was only animated by what made him alive. And he was shifting his focus from the 3D dead part, the part that didn't live on, to the part that was always alive and that will continue to be alive. And so you let the dead bury the dead and have this connection because they're still really right there. And that was another thing Eileen was clarifying to me. And even different things we've said along the way, like in the very beginning, how one of us had made the comment about this being used as sort of this whole thing going on right now is sort of an exit for a lot of people, and that was actually true. A lot of people will use it as an exit, and to have this higher perspective that when people move on, they actually become advocates for us on the other side, and to have this higher dimensional aspect of it as we move through some of these challenging times. So with that, I will leave you guys. Lots of love, light, and unity. We'll see you in the next one. Peace.